Welcome, Monica, to our training series for Town Night, and we're so happy to have you here. Let me introduce you to our journalist viewers. This is Monica Cordero. She is a data journalist. She is a Report for America Corps journalist at Investigate Midwest. She covered business, technology, agriculture, environment, politics, religion, issues affecting the LGBTQ community, and cross-border investigations. Her work has appeared in Univision, Bloomberg Businessweek, Radio Ambulante, NPR, Open Democracy, and the New York Times. She's a graduate of the University of Costa Rica and the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. Welcome, Monica. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Barbara, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you and the other journalists that are with us in this program.
Yeah, it's going to be a great community. So let me ask you, let's start from the beginning about what does data bring to a story, in your opinion?
There are four things or four reasons to bring data to include data in our story. Okay. First of all is the validation and support. Data can help us to prove our initial hypothesis of a story, or the claims made in the story. It's a way to give us context to. Sometimes we have a phenomenon and data, an issue, and data could help us to show there is a trend, there is a phenomenon that give context of what is the position of this specific issue, for example, in over time or in a general topic. New perspective, working with data, we could ask questions to the data for things like seems like are common. For example, accidents and car accidents. Sometimes if we look at the data, we can find trends, and we could show that a specific accident is not something casual. It's a trend in a specific group of communities or a group of age people. Then it could give you that opportunity. And the fourth element is the visualization. Sometimes we can't, with a visualization, we could give other perspective to our story. We could have the text, but we could add a nice visualization that can explain what we are talking about in the story.
That's great. Okay, so let's go to questions. Like, what are the key questions that you ask when you're working with a database or a set of data?
The first thing is you cannot add data to the story. Doesn't make sense. The data have to have a purpose. Then a good question is, if there is a question I want to ask in the story that I can be answered with the data, a specific data set, is the story I can make better. This is story that I want to do. It could be better if I add data. And then I have to ask myself, what data is available? Where I should get this data? The other question is, do I have the skills to work with this data? And this is important then. And sometimes I remember when I started doing stories with data, it's a little overwhelming that there's a lot of data. How can I imagine this? That this amount of data is support for in Excel spreadsheet or in Excel or a spreadsheet, sorry. Right. Then it's a question that you have to be honest with yourself, because there is an opportunity to work with other journalists in collaboration. It's a good way to do that kind of stories or learn. I feel like a good part of the skills that I have learned during my career is doing a project.
Yeah.
This is why I recommend not be afraid to work with data, to learn a new language, for example, Python, R, SQL. You could start with a small project, and you could advance in your skills every time that you start a new project. In every project, I feel like it's something that any data journalist will tell you. You learn something. There's always, you learn something, a new skill, a new function, and a new tip to do the things. This is a question that we have been discussing in Investigate Midwest about, for example, platforms as ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. Can I use that kind of platforms to do a data story? Well, I think like at this moment, the recommendation will be, no, you have to know what you need to do.
Right.
To ask questions to ChatGPT.
Right. What is the purpose that you're trying to serve?
Exactly.
It's
not a copy-paste.
Answer
you cannot copy-paste a code because you made a mistake. You at least have to understand what the code means,
Right.
Then, and the other recommendation is like work with data is is the same that work with any other source.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need a pen and a paper and write questions that you want to do with data. If you start from scratch, it's going to be a mess, or you're going to feel overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Then the best way is to sit with a coffee or a cup of tea or something.
Yeah.
and start to analyze the columns that you have.
Right.
And what kind of questions I can ask.
Great. I love that. Don't be afraid. Just, ask for help. But yeah, definitely get in there and really look at the data. And I love that you started out with like, it's got to have a purpose. Data is not just for data's sake. What are you trying to do with the data, right? Or statistic, right? Okay, that's terrific, Monica. Let me ask you, if you're not necessarily working on a data-driven story, but a daily story or a breaking story or even an enterprise story, and you're looking for some data to help you tell that story, what are some of the best sources that you recommend for people to go to?
The first thing is understand well your story.
Yeah.
Then and ask yourself where I can find who collect the data that are related with this story.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, for example, government databases.
Yep.
It's important to start to have like data state of mind.
Oh, okay.
Thinking always like, okay, I have this fact, an accident, a pollution case,
mm-hmm.
or
health,
a profile of a specific community. Yeah. Who collect this data? Who are in charge of this specific issue in the government? Right. Then you could go there. The other thing is, other way to find this data is to track the data point. It means, for example, if you have report mm-hmm. about health, mm-hmm. okay, we always pay attention of the findings and everything, yeah. But the biography, bibliography
Yeah.
or the notes. Sorry, the notes.
Yeah, the footnotes,
The
bibliography. Yeah.
footnote. The footnote. There is a good source
Great.
because they always mention the report, the database, the expert that have been working with this specific topic. And this is a good way to in every government report, there is a graphic.
Yeah.
And the source of the graphic always tell you where the data come from. And
Right.
then you can go there.
My friend, the database editor, Margot Williams, always starts with the footnotes whenever she sees a big report. That's great. What else?
And the other thing is, if you have a little bit more of time, when you have a number and a statistic,
Okay.
figure out where this data point come from. It means if, I don't know, it is a pollution case, where this pollution case should be reported. And you go back until you find the agency. The other trick, when you have a little bit more of time, is how many agencies manage the same data, because sometimes one agency have part of the data.
Yeah.
Then you could have surprised that there is other part of the data or data related with this specific data set that other agency have. Yeah. And this is like the traceability of a data point.
Right. Right. You can find an angle that way too. Like, so you found maybe your data point or statistic, but there is another statistic that's kept about that type of issue or or data, right? That's great advice.
And this is specifically important when you are when you need to request a FOIA request.
Okay. Some of information.
Because some an agency could tell you, well, this data is not available, or I could only give you part of the data because the other is confidential. And what happens if other agency have similar data with the part of the data that the other agency cannot give you?
That's great. Yeah.
It's a good trick.
There's lots of overlap, like the Department of Homeless, the Department of Homeless Services with health and mental hygiene. Yeah, definitely.
EPA, the agency in the United States that oversees environmental issues, is a good example because you have state levels and you have the federal level.
Right. Right. That's right. Yeah. And you can always, you always think about the geography you're talking about too, but they all report up, right? So maybe you could get that data from the state if you can't get it from the city, or the federal level if you can't get it from the state. That's really a good point.
Other sources are research center and academic institutions. We always have studies. They have their own databases sometimes. One of my favorite sources is public libraries.
Yeah?
Because the public libraries sometimes have access to databases, private databases that they get, that you could access but free in the public library and sometimes online.
Right.
The public library, I think like you could access around the world.
Yeah.
Is a good source of databases. Others are not-profit organizations. You have to consider that sometimes non-profit organization has their own purpose. Then something that you have to consider when you use this data that could have a bias there. But organizations like the World Bank, like UN, one of my favorites is OCCRP, the Organizing Corruption Project. And they have beautiful database called Aleph.
Aleph, ALEPH. Yeah.
Yes, and this platform combines millions of documents, databases, leaks, and investigations. And one of the wonderful things of this database is that the database or the platform is able to recognize a name, for example, of a person or organization in different languages.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's terrific. Okay, thank you for that. Those are all outstanding. And you did some work with OCCRP, right?
I had the opportunity to work with them in 2017 during the summer. It is an amazing organization.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's talk about interrogating data. How do you go about questioning that data? Like what sort of considerations are topmost for you?
The first thing is question the organization that collect the data.
Got it.
What is the reputation of this organization? How reliable is this source? For example, if you work with government agencies, it's an easy way to work with databases.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes.
Right.
You have to consider that every time that you work with a database, there is a human being behind.
Mm.
Means there could be a mistake.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I have been surprised for mistake that I have found in the data in election boards, central banks in other countries, that the organization that you shouldn't think they make mistakes.
Right.
But I feel like this is the first recommendation. Be sure what kind of organization you are working with.
Got it.
The organization that collect the data.
Mm-hmm.
Second is to understand what kind of data it is.
Mm-hmm.
You could download the data or scrape the data and have a beautiful database. But if you don't understand what is behind how they collect the data,
Mm-hmm.
for example,
Mm-hmm.
I remember with one of the Department of National Resources in the Midwest, I was working with water quality data. And the data was collected through samples that they do during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, I talked with a former public official that used to work, or I think that she was in charge of this specific department.
Mm-hmm.
She told me what the flaws of the data was.
Oh, great.
What the flaws of the data had. Then this is important to understand because, for example, in that case, they used to took 5 samples of data in different points.
Oh.
Which of the 5 samples I should consider the best? The time. They could give you. You have to understand how the data is collected and what problems this data could have. In order to take a good decision in the moment that you analyze the data, something that you have to include in your methodology to be transparent with your readers. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is what you can say and you cannot say with this data.
Yes. Then,
and in this case, is all way to do a reporter. Mm-hmm. Take the phone, call the person in charge and talk with them. Then you could talk. If the people directly related with the data don't want to talk with you, former officials, works, scientifics or experts that have been working with the data, experts in the field that have been working with the data, other reporters. I think like the community of data reporters it's so generous because we always, I think like every data reporter, it's able to help someone.
That's the best advice I've heard. Like if you are put, get pushed off, make that call. But if you get pushed off by the agency, there's so many great ideas there for people to reach out to. And, we do have a community of journalists, right? And you're just asking for an idea of like, you did a great job with this data. Can you help me understand the question that I'm trying to answer or the gap I'm trying to fill?
The other thing is the data timeless.
The timeliness. Yes.
The timeless, exactly. Yeah. Because it is important to understand for how long this data have been collected. If I could, my findings I could show trends with my findings. Yeah. For example, if they have only collected for 2 years, but if you have at least 5 years, it's better. The other is the consistency of the data. For example, check the columns, the type of data. If a column is a number, or you have a mix type of data in one column. If there's a lot of mis data in one column, you need to take decisions. You have to know this database as your baby. You have to explore every corner of the data. A good practice is to do like 3-4 questions in order to figure out if you have consistent results.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Of course, the bias and the bias that the data could have. This is important. It's related with the organization that collect the data. Understand how they collect the data, help you to do that. And the flaws of the data too. And the documentation. This is one of the best things that I haven't learned in my career, the documentation, to understand well how they collect the data, all the methodologies. If you're working with Python, how the database is structured in order, for example, to ask the questions to the data, to get the data, to call the data. The other thing is the data dictionary. And this is so important when you do a FOIA request. You could, if you only request the data and you don't request the data dictionary, you are gonna have a problem, because, and at the end, what is the meaning of every column? You need to know what every column means.
So you need to see a data dictionary. You look for it or ask for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
I always request the data with the data dictionary, the documentation, the methodology.
Right.
The same, some organizations don't have a data dictionary. Then the best way is to call them or to look at experts that have been working with this data.
That's great. We're going to stop here because we're going to do a part 2 for our 3rd training module that you're going to help us out with. So stay tuned. Hold on.